The Galactic War Council had been in session for 300 years. The Corvani Empire and the Zelithan Federation had turned half the galaxy into a battlefield, each species convinced of their righteous cause. Trillions had died. Entire systems lay in ruins. Every attempt at peace had failed. Mediators from dozens of neutral species had tried and given up. The hatred ran too deep, the grievances too numerous. Both sides had sworn to fight until the other was extinct. Then James Murphy walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there. Humans weren't even council members. Their civilization was barely 60 years into space travel. But somehow this unremarkable man in a worn flannel shirt had bypassed security, strolled past guards, and entered the most secure chamber in the galaxy carrying nothing but a thermos of coffee. "Sorry I'm late," he said, pulling up a chair between Supreme War Master Crix and Fleet Admiral Zethera, the two beings who'd spent centuries trying to annihilate each other. Traffic was murder. You know how it is. The room froze. Guards reached for weapons, then stopped, confused why they felt no threat from this intruder who spoke like he'd been invited. "Who?" Crix began, his battle-scarred mandibles clicking in outrage. "Jim Murphy, contractor," the human said, pouring coffee from his thermos. "I fixed things. Heard you folks had a problem that needed fixing. Remove this creature," Zethera shrieked, her crystalline form flashing angry red. Jim took a sip of coffee. "See, that's interesting. 300 years of war, and you both still react exactly the same way to interruptions. You're more alike than you think." "We are nothing alike," both leaders roared simultaneously, then glared at each other for the synchronization. "Right?" Jim nodded. "That's why you both use the same battle formations. Why your languages share 40% of their root words. Why your home planets have nearly identical gravity and atmospheric composition. But sure, nothing alike." The council chamber erupted in denials and accusations. Jim waited, drinking his coffee, letting them exhaust themselves. He'd seen this before. Not with galactic empires, but with feuding neighbors, divorced couples, and stubborn business partners. The scale was different. The pattern was always the same. "You done?" he asked when the noise died down. "Good. Now let's talk about the Theshan colony massacre." Both leaders erupted again. The Corvani blamed the Zelithans. The Zelithans blamed the Corvani. Each had proof the other fired first. "Funny thing," Jim interrupted, pulling out a beaten-up tablet. "I did some digging. Found the original colony transmission logs in an old Earth database. We archive everything. It's a weird habit. Want to know what really happened?" He didn't wait for permission. Pirates, specifically the Drex Syndicate. They hit the colony, used stolen weapons from both your empires. Classic false flag operation. They've been playing you against each other for 3 centuries, selling weapons to both sides. The silence stretched. Then both leaders demanded proof. Jim shrugged and transmitted the files. "Your intelligence agencies knew within a decade. But by then, the war was profitable for too many people. Easier to keep hating than admit you'd been played." "Even if true," Crix growled. "Too much blood has been spilled. Peace is impossible," said the divorced couple I mediated last month, Jim replied. They'd been fighting over custody for 8 years. Know what broke the deadlock? Their kid asked them why they spent more time hating each other than loving him. He stood, walking to the great view screen showing the galaxy. "You've got 17 billion children between your empires growing up knowing nothing but war. They don't care who started it. They just want it to stop. Humanity is naive," Zethera hissed. "You've barely left your cradle." "Maybe," Jim agreed. "But we spent 50,000 years learning something you haven't." Every conflict ends one of 2 ways. Either everyone dies or someone decides to stop. We nearly chose option 1 a few times. Nuclear weapons, climate disaster, bioweapons came real close to making Earth a monument to stupidity. He turned back to them. "Know what saved us?" Some tired person in a room like this saying, "What if we just stopped? Not because we forgot, not because we forgave, but because we got exhausted carrying all that hate." The human pulled out 2 identical documents. Peace treaty. Basic framework. Territory returns to pre-war borders. Reparations paid into a joint fund for rebuilding. War crimes tribunal for profiteers on both sides. And mandatory cultural exchange programs. Because your kids deserve to grow up knowing their enemies are just people. It can't be that simple, Crick said quietly. Course not, Jim laughed. It'll take decades to implement, centuries to heal. But you know what? Your species both live for millennia. You've got time. Question is, you want to spend it killing or building? 47 hours later, the Treaty of Murphy was signed. Not because the human had offered revolutionary solutions, but because he'd done something no one else had, treated two galactic powers like squabbling neighbors who'd forgotten why they started fighting. The war ended not with triumph or defeat, but with exhausted acceptance that maybe, just maybe, living was better than dying for a cause nobody could quite remember. And somewhere in Ohio, Jim Murphy went back to mediating disputes between neighbors over fence lines, unaware he'd just ended the largest war in galactic history with common sense and a thermos of coffee.